14th, 2023 of the Planning Commission. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So just a couple of housekeeping items tonight. I did hear some feedback from my wife that when she's been listening to the meetings, she does have a hard time hearing at times. So I'm assuming that others may have a similar concern. So let's just please try to keep the mics as close to us as possible. Moving into the agenda, consideration for tonight, I think the plan is to continue forward with reviewing the sign ordinance changes and review some of the information that both Sarah has provided and Denise, you have provided as well. And then I also, that's the majority of it. I'm also going to raise a couple of questions about some discussions I've had with Steve Langworthy. There's also here the ongoing reports, but we do not have the representatives for those tonight. So I think we will forgo those. So any questions on the agenda for the evening? If nothing, we're going to continue with the agenda as planned. Does anyone have a conflict of interest with any items on the agenda this evening?
Do you want to do a motion on the agenda?
Oh, excuse me, we should have done it. Yes, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as outlined? Second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Denise was second.
I didn't. I thought you
Oh, it
did.
was Laura. I didn't.
I will, though. I second it. I will second that.
Moving forward with with conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest? Okay. Approval of the meeting minutes from January 23rd meeting. I would have to comment, I do like the format. It seems different than what it was in the past. Okay, yeah, I like it. It breaks it up a little bit. Anybody have any questions or comments on the minutes? No edits? May I have a motion to approve the minutes as drafted?
Wait,
Do you have a?
what am I looking at? I printed this off before I left. I could have sworn that I read something that, yes, was definitely yours. But I'm looking at one right now that I printed off. It says Thursday, November 10th. I don't know how I could have, but. So in the packet, if you bring it up.
One online?
I had the one that was in my email. Did I somehow?
It's right behind the agenda.
Below, okay, so I'm looking at the packet and it's January 23rd for the agenda. And then below that, it's November 10.
Right, so on the 23rd, we did approve those minutes, because we had a meeting that day. So that's not true.
Up at the top, the date. Let me show you here.
So Laura, are you saying the date at the top was wrong?
Yeah,
That's that one.
okay.
It's not right in front of me.
I will say that I
I remember reading something that I knew was yours, but maybe I read the wrong Now you got me
Sorry.
worried. Did I send the right, did I send?
I mean, I've got the signs and everything. It's just that one within the packet.
Hmm.
Or no. No. I see what it is. I brought up the packet from last time
Oh.
and the packet from here, and I printed the wrong one. Okay,
Oh.
cool. All right, we're good then. Sorry.
So do you have any, Laura, do you have any suggestions, changes?
No, I was good with it when I read it.
Okay, that's good.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. May I have a motion to approve the minutes as drafted?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as drafted.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Public comment on any items on the agenda this evening. If there's any public comment, please fill out the comment cards and please step forward, maintaining comments to about 3 minutes if possible. Anyone this evening have any public comments? Hearing none, we would move on to ongoing reports. We do not have any of the representatives this evening for any of the reports, so we're going to forego that section. I guess the planning
here.
commissioner. I'm sorry, you're here, Sarah. Excuse me. I take that back.
You have a written report on your desk related to the permits and business that's been happening in the office for January and February. So if there's, if anyone has any questions related to that.
I have one question, and it came up a little bit before. The LD, apparently that stands for Land Division Application. What does all of that mean? It's a transfer to land division, so, because I know those are 3 smaller lots that were.
Right. They combine 3 lots. So in our land division ordinance, you're required to apply to combine or change the boundary between lots. And we just call them, because it's in the land division ordinance, that's how they're filed by land division. I understand that it's not dividing, it's actually combining, but it's under the same ordinance, same application, same process essentially.
Okay, any other questions of Sarah on her report? Any noticeable uptick in activity as far as permits or anything, applications?
No, it hasn't. Maybe a little bit in the last week or two, but I'm surprised actually that we've not seen more activity. Now that I say that, I just, it's all
Thanks.
over. But we've got, other than our permits, we've really been dealing more in enforcement. We have one of these enforcements we issued tickets for, so we have a formal hearing for that in March for those tickets. And then we have an appeal of the ZBA decision for the helicopter pad and / patio that is also in court. So most of my time has been in dealing in that realm more so than land use permits or anything like that.
Okay, any other questions from the commission members? If not, move on. Do we have any correspondence this evening?
No.
Yes, we do have the
Do you wanna
language.
put that
Yes, and I did just hand that out a few moments ago. So we're submitted a memo from ordinance consultant Steve Langworthy dated February 8th to the Torch Township. This was based on a request that I had asked him. I called him and asked him in our last meeting in January. I'd mentioned that I had a brief conversation with him, and then I would reach back out to him and ask him to write down his thoughts on 3 major questions. And so I called him back. He listened into the meeting we had in January. And so I called him back and then asked him to kind of put his thoughts down on 3 questions. The first question was his thoughts around working on kind of a significant redo or rewrite of the of the zoning ordinance before redoing the master plan, and his thoughts on that. And he lays out several different aspects of that, and people can read it themselves. But in summary, he said he's seen it both ways. He's seen where townships have, ideally you would have the master plan we work done first, but sometimes conditions are such that you need to work more drastically or significantly on the township ordinance, on the zoning ordinance. So he's seen it both ways. He feels that in this case, it's kind of a mixture of, sometimes townships have kind of an emergency they have to deal with, and they have to go and take drastic measures on their ordinance, and they need to do that right away. Other times they don't. In this case, he wouldn't characterize it as an emergency, but he felt that there were a number of items in the zoning ordinance that needed to be addressed quickly. And we'll come back to that in a second. The second question I asked him in particular, when looking at the ordinance, why focus on signs first? That was obviously Sarah's recommendation, and I think it may have been a recommendation of our township attorney as well, because of a Supreme Court case that basically required basically regulations around signs to be content neutral. And he describes a little bit about the logic in that. And we had talked about this last time, so I don't think there's any surprises there. He said he would agree that was probably the highest of the priority of the ordinance reviews to undertake for us. And then the last thing was around the method of the review. And this one, I'd asked him the question, is it better to try to do, obviously you can't do it all at once. You have to break it down into pieces, because it's a comprehensive document. And did he feel, based on his review of our current zoning ordinance, and he's also looked at the draft that has been presented by Sarah and Beckett and Rader, his view was that it should be looked at essentially all at once. Like you take it and do more of a comprehensive rewrite. His view of it is that there's enough changes and constructual changes within that it would probably be more appropriate to take a little bit more broader look at it at once. And his recommendation would be to proceed forward. While it's not quite captured here in his memo, in the conversation I did have with him, he felt that, and I think I paraphrased this last time, he did feel that if we made changes, and far sweeping changes to the ordinance, and then went and redid the master plan, that his view is that the vast majority of those would still remain intact, because that's kind of your core kind of operating guidance of what you do. It's not strategic, it's more tactical. And the majority of the tactical things would remain in place. The strategic things you would refresh, and you might have to come back and make some changes afterwards. But he's seen it both ways, and he said it does not seem to be a view. I guess I would encourage the planning commission members to read this at your leisure, digest it. I'm not suggesting any action at this point. It's further input. We are missing 3 of our planning commission members tonight. So I want them to have a chance to see this as well and think about it. And then hopefully in our next meeting, we can come back as a group and consider that broader question and make basically rethink our direction a little bit here. Questions on that? Is there anything that comes to mind? Because we do have some dollars we can tap into, Steve, if we want to help us manage this process. And so I guess I just ask any of the commission members if you've got any questions or anything that we could take back to him, or any considerations around that. Okay, hearing none, then new business. Sarah, do we have any new items of new business tonight?
No new business.
Okay, unfinished business, the annual report. Where did we leave off last time on this?
I made a couple of changes just to clarify. For instance, in the looking back, I made it clear that there was approval for a couple of items, and then I pulled out the Dollar General as a separate sentence. Just how it was worded, it wasn't clear how that all worked. And then I reworked this sentence, or I added in the first sentence, and looking forward, the PC will work on zoning amendments as needed that need immediate attention and intends to begin working on the master plan. I changed that sentence as well. So at the last meeting kind of was those changes, and then you were looking for the members that weren't here to be able to provide some input on it, but they're the same members that are not here tonight for input. So I don't know if you would just like to move forward with it, or if you still want to wait for them to be at a meeting.
What's when do we have to submit this by?
There's not a hard deadline on it. The board already knows your desires and what you want to do next month, just based on conversations that I think both yourself and I have had with the supervisor for moving forward, and the board's already working on their budget and, having their public hearings. So usually I would say before that happens, but we've kind of already worked through that. So if you want to hold off a month, there would be no issue with that.
I would like to hold off until the next meeting. If we get to the next meeting and we still don't have the representation, we're going to move forward. But I would like to have the other planning commission members a chance to take a look at it and weigh in on this. So,
did anybody have any other corrections that they'd like to see in it?
I thought it was great. The only thing I noticed was the word "to" missing in the second to last sentence. But otherwise, I thought it was fantastic.
Under looking forward?
Yes.
Okay. I will add the 2 before the next version.
Fantastic. Perfect with that.
so we are done with annual report for this evening. It's going to be brought up again at the next meeting. So let's pick up on the zoning ordinance amendment for signs. So Sarah, there is quite a bit of work that you have done. Denise, I know you had provided some information as well and some thoughts.
Yeah.
How would you suggest we go through it at this point?
Well, let me just give you a quick update, and then I'll turn it over to the commission. So they're kind of in your packet, I guess, backwards. I'm going to start with the amendment. So at the last meeting, you made some comments. So I provided a red line version of the amendment based on the comments that we had at last month's meeting, shifting the tables that have the signs up near the beginning, because that's what most people are interested in. So wanted you to be able to read through it all as a full document. We didn't get to talk last month about changeable LED signs, so that was kind of my note to pick up on that. So I don't know if we'll get a chance to, but another thing we talked about at last month's meeting were the existing signs in the community, and if the regulations were going to make a lot of those signs non-conforming. So I just used Google Maps and drove along the highway and took screenshots of the maps, of the signs that I could find. So 31 has a nice, that's a fresh, recent, it's not an aerial, I guess, image of the community when you're driving along, where M88 was very old, so those images didn't show up. But Denise did provide, and they were on your desk tonight. She went out and took some pictures of signs, and she can talk about that. And quite a few of those signs in her packet actually are on M88. So if you didn't get out in the community and take a look at those pictures, those signs, then you have them there. We also did chat briefly last month about if there were any signs that you liked anywhere else in your travels, to bring those back and take a look at them. But my kind of looking through the existing signs in the community, I actually was pleasantly surprised that I don't think that our 50 square foot is an issue. Most of the signs are smaller than that. And I think if you wanted to, we could even decrease that size down to somewhere closer to 30 or 32, maybe 4x8. So 32 square feet. And a lot of the signs are not too tall. There's a couple of them that are tall. And I guess when we're getting to a smaller size, I would worry about them being too tall, because you have something, I don't mean to be too critical, but like the post office sign where you have this little sign at the top of a post, and it's kind of awkward to me. And that picture is in the packet, so you can see it. but it just kind of, it looks a little out of place and it doesn't quite look village-like, I guess, when we're kind of going for that village feel. So that one's not really that tall, but it's not a, kind of, if it were a shorter sign, it might look better placed, I think.
I think what I found was the ones that were taller in there. I'm like, oh, I've never noticed that.
Yeah,
Like even the Eastport Market, one time I was there, I'm like, where's their sign?
yeah. Yeah.
It's right there, but
Yeah, and I think, we do kind of slow down going into the village, the village spots, and that's where most of our commercial signs would be. So you can take that into consideration too for the size and the height versus a highway or a freeway, that you're driving along, that you need the height and the bigger signs to be able to see them further away because you're going faster. But in the end, there's no right or wrong answer. It's whatever you're comfortable with and what you like the look of. But this was to just help give a basis for, how many signs might become non-conforming or an issue with the regulations related to that. So that's all I really have for my report. I'll just be here to take notes for any changes, answer any questions that you have in the amendment. And then I don't know if Denise, you want to make a couple more statements about your pictures?
Well, I appreciated kind of the assignment because when I'm reflecting on our master plan, actually, maintaining and enhancing the rural quality of life, preservation of the small community feel. Like you said, I was pleasantly surprised that most of them kind of gave me that vibe. And I was pretty pleased with what we have. I already talked with you, Sarah, about one that seemed like it had more signs than we had put in you had put in the preliminary report. The boat shop, they seemed like they had more signs than was suggested. But overall, I thought, especially the newer signs seem to really comply with the thought, and it's consistent with the township members' values for the community. And so I think we're on the right path.
Barbara?
My only comment would be, I think we are being extremely generous with the size of the signs. I don't think they need to be that big. I mean, some of these 50 square feet for a sign seems enormous to me. Even the small signs, what we're talking about, 8 square feet or something.
Oh, for the temporary ones?
Yeah, the temporary signs, is that 8 square feet?
Yes.
I think it's too much. I think instead of that, I'd rather see it smaller. And if somebody's on a corner or on the water, they can have a sign that anybody can see from any of those vantage points. So they could have 3 actually, but they have to be small. So you could have one on the water, and if you're on a quarter light, you could have one on each street.
Which of the signs to Barbara's point, which is the biggest sign here, do you think? I'm assuming maybe it's the Berkshire Hathaway sign? Not height, just size.
Peterson's is a decent size because it has the 2 signs.
Oh,
So
that's true.
the perception is it's a little bit smaller because it's broken up into 2 signs, but that's a pretty good size.
What about the Wilderness Mountain? Is that a big one? I can't tell from the picture.
Wilderness Mountain. Oh, that one, it looks larger because it's wide and it's set on top of a base. So that one is probably,
Excuse me, guys. We're getting some feedback that you can't hear very well. Can we make sure the mic?
Oh,
Thank you.
The Wilderness Mountain is probably closer to 50 square feet in that example. But in the township, the Berkshire Hathaway, that's a fairly large sign for the community. And then the Marathon sign at Eastport Market is a decent size too, but it's still probably closer to 30, 35 than 50. The tallest sign we have in the township is the Eastport Market sign. That's right at 20 feet. And that's under our current ordinance, we allow up to 20 feet. So going down to the 8 feet, you'd probably run into Peterson's, the Torch Cafe, and Eastport Market. Those signs would become non-conforming when you're decreasing the size of it. The Eastport Market, that's already non-conforming because they have the fuel sign. They're the market sign. And then there's another kind of sign that talks about, I didn't put a close up on it. There's another kind of 4x8 sign that's down a little bit further that talks about like fresh meals or something like that. So there's a lot of extra signage on that property already. But like I talked about too, our current ordinance says you can have one that's 50, that's this type of sign. You can have two that represent the business. So size-wise, that may actually be conforming under our current ordinance because of how the language, and I don't think that it is clear what, they don't say freestanding or wall, it just says signage. So I think you could argue right now that that's closer to conforming currently than it will go, because we're only going to allow one freestanding sign for each business in the future.
It would be interesting to know, like, how many square feet, as an example, that Berkshire Hathaway sign is.
Yeah, we can look into that and see if they pulled a sign permit for it. That'd be the
Okay.
easiest way for us to determine that.
Just trying to get a sense, because I don't know, if we throttle it back from 50 to 35, it'd be nice to see one that's roughly 35 to see what that looks like. So we're not,
Yeah, I like the sign, that Marathon gas sign. I like that size. But if we were to say, pick one or the other, and they had to throw Eastport Market on there, would it be enough? They'd probably appreciate the extra.
We can look at that sign too. I'm sure there's a permit for it because it's not, that old. And that one's close enough to the ground that we can measure. The Berkshire one might be a little tall to measure, but tape measure, but we can work on that.
Which one is the motion?
The Marathon gas station one.
yeah, so if we get these are great pictures, it's super helpful. If we can get a little bit of sense of which ones are sized which way, and then also the height. I think you said the Eastport Market was about 20 feet.
That is at 20 feet.
It's 20 feet.
Yep.
Yep.
The new part. Mhm.
So then, I don't know if any of these in here are, because we're proposing now 10, correct? I think.
It was either 10 or 8. Nope, it is 10 in the commercial.
Bless you.
I'd also ask the commission members of any other questions that we should be asking Sarah, because I think A, will help us, but also when we get the rest of the commission back, we'll have all of this input. Because we're going to need to have everything pulled together and then have a public hearing for this particular section of this ordinance before we can take any action on it.
Would it make sense, Sarah, to have the size of the sign determined by the size of the lot?
It could, the frontage of the lot.
Yeah, because like Eastport Market, it is distinctly at least two things. It's a gas station and then it's the market. I don't know what the third sign is. I don't remember ever seeing it, but it would seem to me that that the size of the lot could make a difference on the size of the sign or the number of signs. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a valid, we can take a look, because Brownwood Acres has quite a, they have a couple of signs, but that's a long parcel as well for the width. Granted, that's one, one business, or it might be multiple, but, their retail part of it, for Brownwood Acres. So I have had communities that do that they either, if you're like on a corner, sometimes you get extra signage around the corner, or, having kind of one main or prominent sign and then having some smaller signage allowed as well. So you could have, maybe the one for they could pick, Eastport Market has a bigger sign, and then the gas station could have something that's half the size or, 2/3 of the size of the other main one as a kind of an accessory use or complementary use. So I can work on some of that if you guys like that idea.
Do you know how tall the Peterson sign is?
I do not.
That looks like that's way over 20 feet.
Yeah.
It's way up, it's up there.
We'll look and see if we can find any details on that sign.
Andy would be happy to go out there and climb up and measure that one.
I've done crazier things.
That's probably an older, it doesn't look in too bad a shape, but it's probably been there for quite a while, either that business or previous.
If I put a ladder on
businesses.
it, it would probably knock it over.
But yeah, and Denise did mention the one sign kind of for where the boat storage and all of that. They have a lot of signs out by the road and on the building, and I think that's more of an enforcement item. I don't know that we have permits for all of those. I'm guessing that it's kind of just evolved over time. So we'll take a look at that and see if there's anything that we can do about it.
Another question, looking at the Eastport Market signs, couple thoughts. One, it doesn't, yes, the taller sign is pretty high up there. But if I look at I guess, coming back to Barbara's point, you think of the size of that complex. It's not an unreasonable amount of signage, and I don't drive past there and say, oh my God, there goes our Hamlet type feeling. So that's one comment. And then the other thing is, if I look to the right of that picture, it looks like there's some kind of billboards over there. What's the story with those?
Further down, so the first white square, that's that sign that I can't remember what it says on it. It says something about hot meals or something like that, but there are some billboards back there as well. The current ordinance does have billboards in it. The draft ordinance does not have billboards in it at all. That was intentional from my perspective, to not allow the billboards, so the existing ones can continue as they are, and they'll probably never go away because they're permitted by the state. They don't only give so many permits, and they just don't let them go. But we also wouldn't allow any new ones in any other location. So, they can fix up and replace what's there, but not install a new billboard. And a billboard is considered anything that's off premise. So it's not related to the size. It's because we're regulating on premise signs. So any sign that becomes off premise becomes essentially a billboard.
I have another comment, excuse me, on the small temporary signs. Under general regulations, A says, small temporary signs shall not reduce the unobstructed width of any sidewalk or pedestrian path by less than 4 feet. That's ambiguous to me. I don't know what that means. Shall
So
not
I need to clarify.
reduce by less than 4 feet?
Yeah, so you need to always have 4 feet of clearance
Right.
or walkway.
I understand,
Yep,
but I
I'll
don't think
clarify.
this says this.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'll clarify that.
Okay.
I think just changing by to 2 would make it clear.
Okay.
Sarah, this question is going to really drive you nuts. Under sign illumination, and I was looking at this again, and you like, look at the numbers there, and it gives us a sense of the type or the kind of color of the light, and then also the intensity of it. I don't have a sense of, kind of like these pictures, I think are really powerful to help us conceptualize what might be acceptable versus what we wouldn't want. And I don't have that same kind of measure with the lights. So, and it'd be hard, even taking a picture wouldn't necessarily do it justice either, because it has to be at night to get the light aspect of it. But one thing that might be interesting was to see if we could get a reference of, hey, this sign in this community, or these signs in these communities, that we could then, between now and the next meeting, take a swing by and say, hey, is that something, ideally, if this type of parameters, we could find something that was reasonably close to these parameters or within these parameters versus one that's outside the parameter. I realize it's a difficult ask, but I know personally I would find it very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. That Eastport Market sign is 40 square feet. The tall one.
Oh,
It's not exactly square, but roughly 40 square feet.
So that's 40. That's the tall one, that's just the lettering on it,
Yeah.
right? It is deceiving, yeah.
Okay, I'll try to use some examples of the light to help. Any other comments in the language or any of the changes that I made based on last month?
I like what you did to the signs on park benches and trees and utility poles, except for small donor plaques.
Plaques.
I think that's appropriate.
So Barbara, you've brought up a couple of times in that small temporary sign standard, so page 4 of 9, the maximum area. And so these have 8 square feet everywhere. It can be divided up in however many signs you would like. How does everybody feel about that? I know, Barbara, you feel that's a little large to have 8 square feet. Anybody else's thoughts on bringing that down?
I'm okay with 8.
I can hear you, Laura.
I'm okay with 8.
I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
trying to visualize,
The one in the picture would be 8, right? Or a little
That,
bit
the little
smaller.
sandwich board, that's smaller. That's probably maybe 6, maybe a little under 6. It's a sandwich board sign.
That'd be both sides
Yeah.
equaling 8.
Depends on the angle. It probably would count as just one side because it's, the angle is small enough on the
Okay.
other side of the sign.
Okay.
Would be my guess.
but if I remember last time, if it is 8 square feet, that's what you have in total. You can't have You can have 3 that are 8 divided by 3, 8/3 sized, but you'd be limited to 8 in total, right?
Correct.
And so the only time that we have any time limit on it is if there's a date on the sign, right?
Yeah, so I added C just above that, that says shall be removed within 5 days of the event the sign is advertising. I think that's risky in some instances, especially with political signs, because of freedom of speech related to that. But I know that was something that, a lot of you had asked about, so I threw it in there. It's kind of a question that I'd want to run by the attorney before we go through and fully adopt it.
Could you give an example based on the current businesses that we have here? What a sign like this would be used for?
Seafood sale today, and it'd have like the wire stakes and they'd throw it in the ground. Or, you would use it for like a garage sale personally on a personal property. But mostly it would be like a open house, coming soon, open, now hiring,
But this is a temporary sign.
right?
There's also realtor and trade signs.
Yeah, it would be a realtor sign. If you're having plumbing work done and they want to put the sign out at the end of your driveway saying they're doing work there.
Because the size, the square footage is such a critical aspect of this, I think it's a question we should raise when we get the broader group here and kick that around. I definitely see the point.
Well,
When I look at the sign right there, that was probably less than 8 square feet.
It's much less than I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, so I guess, they can have, what is the current, if they put a what do we have now?
It's different for each sign, so we don't do any
That's right.
enforcement on any of the sizes.
Yeah, so this would be quite dramatic in comparison.
Do we have a definition of abandoned signs?
Of what?
Of abandoned signs?
That's probably one of those things we'd need to add a definition in. I'm guessing in the draft ordinance, which is where this came out of, there's a definition for
Yeah.
it. But
Sarah, I think the other thing we should do for our next meeting is just maybe get 2 pieces of, we'd even put tape on that bulletin board over there, a sign that's, 2 feet by 4 feet and 3 feet by 2 feet, just to get a sense of the difference.
okay.
I think, Sarah, as far as C on the smaller signs, having to take them down within 5 days of the event. Political signs, I think, are governed by state law, by campaign law. You have to take the sign down within a certain number of days after, but if you win in your primary, you can leave it up till after the general election, stuff like that, but that's all in the state law anyway. So I don't know I would assume you could have this in here and don't have to say that that's, except for things that are controlled by state law, because normally that's just
Right.
is the case.
Right.
So I think it's okay to put that in there.
Any other questions of the commission, comments? This won't be the last time. You'll be able to have opportunities on this, so. Sarah, anything else you'd like to add or comment on?
No, so we'll have a couple more examples for next month's meeting, like real world examples for you. Just a couple of clarification, and then we have items we want to talk about and discuss further with the full planning commission, hopefully next month. So,
So to be able to take some action on this, we need to have a public hearing, correct?
Yeah, the next step in moving this forward towards adoption would be to schedule a public hearing. You could do that for March because at the public hearing, you can receive input. You still can make changes on it before making a recommendation and sending it along if you feel like if it's far enough along for that. You know, or if you want to have another meeting to discuss it further before scheduling that public hearing.
So ideally, what I think we would do is because we would need to advertise for that right away, correct?
Yep, I'd have to send it to the newspaper by probably the end of the week to get it in to meet the 15-day deadline.
Okay. So I think we need to get the public hearing scheduled. I think we need to get obviously the public input, and then also get input from the other commission members. So if we were to do that, I mean, ideally, if we had a special meeting, maybe in a couple weeks, and tried to get everybody here, or at least those that weren't here at that meeting, if one of us isn't there, what have you, to get more of that collective input and then kind of take that into that public hearing, then we could kind of move on from there more quickly.
That works for me. I mean, anyone else?
Commission members, does that seem reasonable to you?
Yes.
I was just gonna say that. So yeah, our next meeting is March 14th at 7 PM. So if someone wanted to make the motion to schedule it for that meeting, we would get it published for that.
We need a motion to hold a special meeting.
I was checking my calendar and I think I'm okay for that March meeting. So we do need both a motion to,
I would do a motion that's just to schedule the public hearing. And then, I mean, I think if you want to pick a date tonight, or if you want me to, because there's quite a few members that aren't here, I think maybe just send out an email and see if we can get a special meeting done before that.
yes, we
Public hearing.
won't be able to pick a date
Yep.
tonight.
Yeah, so we just need the motion to schedule the public hearing for the amendment for the March 14th meeting at 7 PM.
So can I get a motion to schedule that public hearing for the meeting of March 14th at 7
At 7
PM?
PM. Yes, so moved.
Can I get a second?
I second it.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So thank you. So Sarah, please schedule that.
Yes.
And Sarah is going to send out something for trying to get a date that
Yes.
most people can be at for the
Yes,
interim special meeting.
yes.
Okay.
We'll try and do that within the next couple of weeks.
Super.
And if at that meeting, I mean, if, we'll get accomplished whatever we can. If we can get through the sign ordinance and feel comfortable going into the public hearing, great. We have some more time. We'll dig into other aspects of the ordinance and start considering these questions that Steve Langworthy commented on and going from there. Any more questions about sign ordinance this evening?
I don't really have a question. I just had a note that there was one piece that you guys were really uncomfortable with. The reestablishment after damage. We didn't do anything to address that, right?
Well, good point.
No, we didn't make any changes to them.
Does everyone feel good about it now?
This was the 50% thing, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I was the one that had the biggest heartbreak on that one.
Yeah, so it's on page 8 of 9 at the top, item D.
Yeah, I think, I do remember thinking about this afterwards, and I kind of concluded that while we could change them from 50 to 75 or something, I mean, it's still, It didn't necessarily make me feel much better either way, so it's kind of like it seemed fine. Do you know where that came from, Sarah, that number?
It's kind of just run of the mill. Usually it's about 50%. Can be at 75, but 50 is just kind of standard. I guess that's what I'd call it.
Well, when we get the other commission members here, we can see if any of them have a real hard time with it as well. If not, I'm fine with it. Okay, I guess we can, we're finished with our unfinished business for the evening. Can now move on to concerns of the commission. Actually, I started last time, so I'll go last this time.
But you're on here as first.
That is true. I don't really have any concerns this evening, other than I want to get these things moving. I'm a little concerned that we've had multiple meetings now in a row with 4 people here, 4 members, and we got to try and get that up. So that's really my only concern. Others?
No.
I feel really good about what's there for the sign stuff. Anything we could have be better than what we've got. And I feel good about what's there. So I think we're looking really good.
I agree with that. Sarah, do you have any concerns?
I have lots of concerns, but for tonight's meeting, no, I'm all set.
Okay. Any last questions for Sarah?
Thank you for taking the time to work through this sign section.
Yes, I think, I like it too. I like the structure. It's with a couple of these changes and we get a few more examples to fine tune some of the numbers in there and stuff. I think we're honing in.
Yeah. And I didn't torture you guys too much with this amendment. That'll come in the future as I try to work different sections and language. So.
Should be a pleasure. So I think now we can move into public comment. If anybody in the audience has any comments this evening, please step forward and fill out the comment card. If there's none, we can move on. That completes our business for the evening. Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting for the evening?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the
Second,
meeting.
I second it.
discussion? All in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.